Someone just confessed. Every secret, every shadowed move they thought you'd never see, laid bare. And now you know. It's grotesque, twisted, filthy. You can feel it crawling under your skin. They thought they were clever, unseen, untouchable. But silence has its own language. And in that quiet, the balance has shifted. You are aware. They are exposed. And control has quietly changed hands. They never planned to confess. Confessions don't come from guilt. They come from pressure, from the unbearable weight of knowing the mask is slipping. What they did behind your back wasn't an accident, wasn't impulse, and definitely wasn't ignorance. It was calculated, quiet, rehearsed. Every smile they gave you was a rehearsal. Every harmless word was a distraction. Deception works best when it feels natural, when it feels friendly. They studied you, not to understand you, to predict you, to learn how much you'd tolerate, how long you'd stay silent, how easily your trust could be bent without breaking. And while you were listening, believing, assuming decency, they were rewriting the story in rooms you weren't invited into. Whispering narratives where you were the fool, the obstacle, the expendable variable. Hidden deception isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It waits. They did things slowly so your instincts wouldn't react. A comment here, a suggestion there, a planted doubt, a subtle rewrite of events. Nothing obvious, nothing provable. Just enough to make others question you and make you question yourself. That's the art of it. If you accuse them, you look unstable. If you stay silent, they continue. Either way, they win, until now, because someone spoke. And when deception is dragged into the light, it doesn't fight back. It collapses. It leaks. It exposes the rot underneath the polished surface. The disgusting part isn't just what they did. It's how comfortable they were doing it. How easily they justified it. How little you mattered when it served their advantage. They told themselves you'd never find out, that you were too distracted, too trusting, too unaware to notice the patterns. They underestimated the one thing deception can't survive: awareness. The moment you see the structure behind the lies, every interaction becomes transparent. Every past moment replays differently. Every pause now sounds louder. And now they know you know. That's the part they didn't prepare for, because deception relies on asymmetry. One side blind, the other informed. But the confession erased that imbalance. The chessboard flipped. Suddenly, they're the ones replaying conversations at night, wondering what you've connected, what you're holding back, what you're choosing not to say. Silence becomes a weapon when the truth is already exposed. They're watching you now, carefully, nervously, trying to read your face the way they once read your weaknesses. But it doesn't work anymore. You're not reacting the way they expected. No confrontation, no explosion, just restraint. And restraint is terrifying to someone who relies on manipulation. They don't know what you'll do with the knowledge. That uncertainty eats at them. Every second you remain composed tightens the pressure. Because deception hates patience. It feeds on urgency, on chaos, on emotional reactions. When none come, the mind fills the silence with fear. They confessed thinking it would clean their hands. It didn't. It only showed how dirty they already were. Now every word they speak sounds rehearsed. Every explanation feels late. Every attempt to normalize the situation exposes their desperation to regain control. But control doesn't return once deception is revealed. It migrates. Quietly. Efficiently. You don't need to confront them. They're already confronting themselves. Every time they see you, they're reminded that their secret failed, that their intelligence wasn't enough, that the person they underestimated is now holding the one thing they can't manipulate anymore, the full picture. And hidden deception, once seen, never feels hidden again. Control doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't shout, doesn't warn, doesn't announce itself. Real control moves quietly, unnoticed, slipping into place while everyone is distracted by louder threats. What they did behind your back wasn't reckless. It was silent by design. Silence gives permission. Silence creates cover. Silence lets rot spread without witnesses. They never needed to confront you. That would have required courage. Instead, they worked in absence, in pauses, in rooms where your name could be reshaped without resistance. Every omission was intentional. Every delay was strategic. They understood something most people never do. The one who controls the narrative doesn't need to speak loudly. They just need to speak first. And they did. They spoke when you weren't there. They framed situations before you could respond. They planted versions of events that made you look uncertain, excessive, unreliable. Not enough to destroy you outright, just enough to weaken your position. Silent control is subtle erosion. It doesn't knock the structure down. It loosens the bolts and weights. You felt it before you knew it. The strange shift in energy. The hesitation in people's voices. The way conversations ended too quickly or avoided your eyes. That wasn't coincidence. That was influence working in the background. Carefully managed, calmly executed. They controlled by withholding information, context, truth. What they didn't say mattered more than what they did. They let assumptions do the work. Let others connect dots that were never meant to exist. That's the beauty of it. No fingerprints, no direct lies, just a vacuum where truth should have been. And humans hate vacuums. They fill them with whatever explanation feels easiest. Usually the wrong one. They watched you react to a reality they designed. Watched you adjust, soften, question yourself. That's where the satisfaction came from. Not power through force, but power through confusion. When someone doubts their own perception, they become manageable, predictable, controlled. Until the confession. Confessions break silent control because they introduce something dangerous: clarity. And clarity doesn't need volume. It spreads instantly. The moment you heard what was really done behind your back, everything aligned. The inconsistencies. The strange resistance, the unearned suspicion. It all made sense, and that's when the control shifted. Not outwardly, Not dramatically, silently. They realized it the moment your behavior didn't change the way they expected. No anger, no pleading, no exposure, just awareness. Awareness is unsettling because it can't be negotiated with. You don't argue with someone who already understands. You don't manipulate someone who sees the mechanism. Now they're trapped inside the very silence they once controlled. Every pause from you feels intentional. Every neutral response feels loaded. They don't know what you'll say, or if you'll say anything at all. And that uncertainty fractures the confidence they once had. Silent control only works when one side is blind. Once both sides see, silence becomes a threat. They replay their own actions now, wondering which detail you know, which version of the story you heard, which allies quietly slipped away the moment truth entered the room. Because silent control collapses fast once exposed. It has no defense, no justification, no clean explanation. All they can do now is monitor you the way they once monitored the situation. Looking for signs, reading between lines, overanalyzing your restraint. They used to decide what stayed hidden. Now they don't know what you're holding. And that imbalance, that quiet reversal, is what unsettles them most. They thought control meant staying unseen. They didn't realize the most dangerous position is being seen and not knowing what the other mind is planning. Silent control doesn't end loudly. It suffocates under its own awareness. And right now, they're the ones holding their breath. Secrets aren't dangerous because they're hidden. They're dangerous because of how easily they twist the people who carry them. What was done behind your back didn't rot overnight. It fermented, layer by layer, thought by thought. Every secret they kept bent their behavior, sharpened their lies, trained their face to stay calm while their mind rehearsed damage control. They didn't just hide the truth. They reshaped it. Twisted secrets don't sit quietly. They leak into tone, timing, hesitation, into the way someone avoids certain topics, into how they explain the wrong details while protecting the real ones. That's how you missed it at first. Not because you were blind, but because the deception was organized, efficient, practiced. They told themselves it was necessary, that what you didn't know couldn't affect you. That secrecy was protection, strategy, intelligence. That's the lie people tell when they're already compromised. What makes it disgusting isn't just the act. It's the comfort, the ease, the way they continued interacting with you while carrying knowledge you weren't allowed to have, laughing, agreeing, pretending loyalty while quietly benefiting from your ignorance. Twisted secrets create double lives, and double lives erode empathy. You stop seeing people as people. You start seeing them as variables. They measured you against the secret. Every conversation was filtered. Every reaction assessed for risk. Could you handle the truth? Would you suspect anything? Were you still useful? That calculation never stopped. And while you were moving forward in good faith, they were standing still, guarding a version of reality that only served them. Twisted secrets demand constant vigilance. One slip, one inconsistency, one wrong detail, and everything collapses. That's why the pressure builds. That's why the confession happened. Not because they wanted to be honest. Because the secret started owning them. They couldn't keep the timelines straight. The justifications stopped sounding convincing even to themselves. And the fear of you finding out became louder than the benefit of keeping it hidden. So they confessed, or partially confessed, or softened the truth enough to feel less monstrous. But you heard what mattered. And now the secret doesn't belong to them anymore. That's the part they weren't prepared for. Because once a twisted secret is exposed, it flips direction. It stops protecting the one who hid it and starts isolating them instead. Every look becomes suspicious. Every silence feels accusatory. They don't know how much you know, and that uncertainty poisons everything. They're scanning your words now, replaying your expressions, searching for signs that you've connected more dots than they intended to reveal. And the worst part, they know you're smarter than they thought. They know you're re-evaluating every interaction that came before, every moment where the secret influenced a decision, every outcome that suddenly makes sense. Twisted secrets unravel entire histories once revealed. Nothing stays neutral. Nothing remains untouched. They can't undo it. They can't explain it cleanly. And they can't control how you interpret it. That loss of control is destabilizing. They used to hold the information advantage. Now they're guessing, waiting, imagining consequences they can't predict. Twisted secrets don't disappear when spoken. They mutate. They live in the space between what was said and what was withheld, in the tension of unfinished explanations, in the knowledge that the confession wasn't pure. It was strategic, timed, minimized. And you know that, which means they're no longer managing a secret. They're managing you. And that's a losing position, because secrets twist the mind that carries them. But exposure twists the mind that once relied on hiding. Right now, they're trapped in that twist, aware that the person they deceived is finally seeing them clearly. And there's no version of the truth left that puts them back in control. Domination doesn't begin with force. Force is crude, predictable, loud. Real domination begins in the mind, where permission isn't asked, only assumed. What they did behind your back wasn't just betrayal. It was an experiment, a test to see how far they could go without you noticing the pressure tightening. They didn't want to defeat you. They wanted to shape you. Mind domination works by rewriting perception, by deciding what you notice, what you question, and what you dismiss. They controlled tempo. When information arrived, when it disappeared, when it felt too late to matter. You weren't supposed to feel attacked. You were supposed to feel uncertain, and uncertainty is fertile ground. They introduced doubt slowly, a subtle contradiction, a story that didn't quite align, a reaction that felt off. Nothing obvious, nothing confrontational, just enough to make you hesitate before trusting your own instincts. That hesitation is the entry point. Once someone doubts themselves, they start outsourcing judgment. They look outward for confirmation. And that's where domination settles in. They position themselves as the constant, the familiar voice, the one who understood, while quietly undermining your confidence in everyone else. What's disgusting isn't just the manipulation. It's the patience. Mind domination requires restraint. You can't rush it. You let the target walk themselves into the maze. You let them believe every thought is their own. That's what they tried to do to you. Behind your back, they curated versions of you for other people. Unstable, emotional, difficult, not dangerous, just unreliable. Because once that idea takes hold, anything you say can be dismissed. You're no longer a threat. You're background noise. And they get to operate freely while you're busy defending your credibility. That's domination without contact. But then the confession happened. And confessions don't free manipulators. They expose the architecture. The moment you learned what they'd been doing, the pressure reversed. Suddenly, the doubts weren't yours anymore. They migrated. Now they're sitting in their mind, wondering how much influence they've lost, wondering whether the spell worked long enough, wondering if you saw through it earlier than they thought. They underestimated one thing: awareness doesn't need to announce itself. You didn't panic. You didn't overreact. You didn't rush to correct the narrative. And that silence disrupted everything. Mind domination depends on emotional response, on predictability, on the target behaving the way the manipulator expects. When that doesn't happen, control fractures. The manipulator starts second, guessing, monitoring, adjusting too late. Now they're analyzing you the way they once analyzed the situation, reading into pauses, replaying conversations, searching for clues in your restraint, because they know what you're capable of now: clarity without noise. They don't know what conclusions you've drawn. They don't know who you've spoken to. They don't know whether you're letting them continue or studying them the same way they studied you. That uncertainty is unbearable to someone who relies on psychological advantage. They thought domination meant staying ahead of you. They didn't realize domination collapses the moment the target stops reacting and starts observing. Every calm response from you now feels threatening. Every neutral look feels deliberate. They're aware that the mind they tried to dominate is no longer available. And worse, it's no longer predictable. They can't control how you interpret the confession. They can't control how the truth spreads internally. They can't control the shift that's already happened, because mind domination doesn't end with confrontation. It ends with awareness, and awareness is silent, untraceable, unsettling. Right now, they're left inside the very maze they built, realizing too late that the mind they tried to command is no longer responding to their signals.